Treyarch's internal developer documents reveal the backstories of Rtophen, Taku, Nikolai and Dempsey, giving us information that we never had before this. We don't know who Rtophen's mother and father were, we don't know much about Nikolai's wife or even his brother, but with these leaked docs, we do. And if you're a story buff like me, you love the COD Zombie storyline, then this is cool stuff. I've already made videos going over maps such as Origins, Mob of the Dead, Transit, Die Rise, but let me show you this. So in the Origins portion of the dev docs, bearing in mind I've already spoken about them in a separate video, which revealed a ton of crazy stuff, check that out, but there was a section that I missed, which gave us brand new bios of Rtophen, Taku, Nikolai, and Dempsey. If you didn't know or haven't watched that other video, these characters weren't even going to be in Origins. Originally, Treyarch planned for it to be their fathers. We were going to play as Heinrich Rtophen, who of course would be Edward Richtofen's father, alongside Mr. Masaki, Mr. Blansky, and Mr. Dempsey. But a couple of months later, just before the map released, Treyarch changed their minds and went with what we ended up getting in-game, the younger premise versions of those characters. And even though now, all these years later, we know a lot about them through the game and the Canorium, but within these documents are hidden bios that contain information background about them that we've never seen before. So starting off with Richtofen's, they wrote, throughout his early childhood in Berlin, Edward Rtophen was obsessed with science, particularly biology. A series of ghoulish, amateurish experiments involving neighbours' pets filled Edward's fascination with the mechanics of life and death, a topic that would remain at the forefront of his mind for the rest of his life. From 1886 until 1891, he studied chemistry and biology at the University of Heidelberg under the tutelage of Dr. Ludwig Maxis. Seeing potential in the enthusiastic but socially awkward Rtophen, the two were to form an unlikely friendship. After graduation, Rtophen began to work at Maxis's chemical manufacturing company, where the two would soon draw attention from the German High Command. After some initial and very successful work to develop the nation's chemical weapon program, the pair soon received significant funding to develop further, less conventional work to aid the nation's war effort. Indulging their wildest theories, their work would see the pair travelling the world, collating and curating all manner of curious artefacts from the fringes of scientific knowledge. One such artefact was discovered during an archaeological dig in Egypt, an element known as 115. Soon after learning of the existence of 115, Rtophen discovered a journal written by Pablo Marinus, a 10th century crusader, which led the scientists to believe that a large deposit of 115 was buried somewhere in northern France. With the full backing of the Kaiser, the scientists, aided by their monstrous war machines, secured the site location and began to dig. So the first thing I will say is, because these bios didn't make it into the final game, you wouldn't be wrong to assume there are certain portions, certain aspects of these documents that just aren't canon. They were an idea, but Treyarch changed their minds later on. So there could be stuff in here that is not a part of the zombies lore, but at the same time, we're just not going to know, because Treyarch, being the developers they are, they're not going to tell us everything. There's going to be information that they're going to withhold from us, and that's always been the case. But we learned from this, throughout Richtofen's early childhood, he was obsessed with science, particularly biology, and he used his neighbours' pets as a part of his ghoulish, amateurish experiments. Fascinated with the mechanics of life and death. I mean, we knew Rtophen, whether it be the Primus or Ultimus version, had a pretty rough childhood. Both of his parents died, and we know from the Canorium and radios in World at War that the Ultimus version of him, before he worked at Group 935, was conducting experiments on animals, but we didn't know he went as far as performing experiments on his neighbours' pets. I mean, that explains why Rtophen is like he is. We knew he studied at Heidelberg University and Maxis tutored him and then went on to work under him later. Yeah, all of the rest regarding Rtophen is pretty standard stuff. They discovered Pablo's journal. That's why they started digging in Origins, because they believed it had large deposits of 115, which it did. So yeah, but that guy was a sick bastard. Moving on then to Nikolai's bio. His says, an intolerable atmosphere is being created, in which you, as well as we, are choking. They are throwing dirty accusations at Lenin and Zinoviev. Lenin has fought 30 years for the revolution. I fought for 20 years against the oppression of the people, and we cannot but cherish a hatred for German militarism. I have been sentenced by a German court to 8 months imprisonment for a struggle against German militarism. This, everybody knows. Let nobody in this hall say that we are hirelings for Germany. Leon Trotsky. The practical imperialist war is the beginning of civil war throughout Europe. The worldwide socialist revolution has already dawned. Germany is seething. Any day now, the whole of European capitalism may crash. Sailors, comrades, we have to fight for a socialist revolution. To fight until the Platerate wins full victory. Long live the worldwide socialist revolution. Vladimir Lenin. Throughout Russia, in the midst of a revolution and chaos, key members of the Bolshevik Party recognized the threat posed by Germany, particularly if they should emerge victorious from World War I. With many Bolsheviks in exile, those with a military background were ordered to remain in Europe in order to carry out top-secret espionage missions to uncover the Germans' plan. One such spy was Nikolai Blansky, a veteran of the Russo-Japanese War. Before being tasked to spy on Germany, Nikolai had been living the quiet life in rural France. Despite leaving a wife behind in Russia, rumour has it that Nikolai remarried several times, once to a simple farm girl and another to the daughter of a wealthy vineyard owner. As no record of these marriages actually exist, some suspect that they were really the product of Nikolai's occasional drunken boasts. Although large and physically intimidating, Nikolai is not the bloated, swaggering drunk that we have seen previously. Instead, he is a very fit and able soldier, possessed with cunning intelligence and wit. Favouring shotguns and brute force, Nikolai is the bruiser in the group, and his barely veiled contempt for both Taku and Rtophen threatens to boil over at any moment. So from this character bio, we learn that Nikolai was tasked with spying on Germany. He was originally living a quiet life in Russia before being told to leave his life behind and get on with his mission, leaving his wife behind, and then, according to him, remarrying several times, one to a farm girl and another to a daughter of a wealthy vineyard owner. But, as we also know, these were lies. Due to Nikolai's drinking, he made these situations up to soften the blow, I guess, try and forget his memories, the things that actually existed. Moving on to Taku Masaki's bio, it says, Emperor Meiji abolished the samurai's rights to be the only armed force in favour of a more modern, Western-style conscripted army in 1873. The samurai became, and I'm going to pronounce some of these words wrong here, shizoku, who retained some of their salaries, but the right to wear a katana in public was eventually abolished, along with the right to execute commoners who paid them disrespect. The samurai finally came to an end, after hundreds of years of their enjoyment of their status, their power, and their ability to shape the government of Japan. However, the rule of the state by the military class was not yet over. In defining how a modern Japan should be, members of the Meiji government decided to follow in the footsteps of the United Kingdom and Germany, basing the country on the concept of noblesse oblige. Samurai were not a political force under the new order. With the Meiji reforms in the late 19th century, the samurai class was abolished, and a Western-style national army was established. The Imperial Japanese armies were conscripted, but many samurai volunteered as soldiers, and many advanced to be trained as officers. Much of the Imperial Army officer class was of samurai origin, and were highly motivated, disciplined, and exceptionally trained. Before the modernisation of the country's military, Taku's father was part of the last true samurai generation. Embittered by his country's cultural shift, Taku's father instilled in his son the many teachings of the samurai tradition, believing that to abandon their ancestral roots would be a disaster for the future. Following in his father's military footsteps, Taku initially served in the mighty Japanese Navy, but he was dissatisfied with his post and requested a transfer to an infantry unit. Before the end of 1904, Taku got his wish and was drafted into General Nogi's Third Army to fight in the Russo-Japanese War. The Battle of Mukden was one of the war's most brutal battles. Both sides were well enriched and were backed by hundreds of artillery pieces. After days of harsh fighting, added pressure from the flanks forced both ends of the Russian defensive line to curve backwards. Seeing they were about to be encircled, the Russians began a general retreat, fighting a series of fierce, re-guarded actions which soon deteriorated in the confusion and collapse of Russian forces. Taku's tactical commander in the battle led him being hailed as a hero, but greater victories and accolades were to follow, none more significant than when in 1917 he was instructed to meet with the Emperor himself. Japan had learned of the work of the German scientists Rtophen and Maxis. Distrustful of both his own military leaders and their international allies, the Emperor ordered Taku to intercept the scientists and ensure that their work be secured for Japan. So in here we finally learn more about Taku's father, who in Alpha Omega we kind of got to pick at who his father would be. So Taku's grandfather, his father's father. Taku spoke about his grandfather's cherry blossom tree.
Answer me a question, my simple samurai friend. What do you really want?
To bring honor to the Emperor and the glorious Empire. Ridiculous question.
Is there not somewhere you really want to go, Takeo? Somewhere peaceful? Perhaps sitting under a beautiful cherry blossom tree?
Cherry blossom? What do you know of grandfather's tree?
I don't think you've ever spoken of your grandfather, Takeo. Was he someone you looked up to?
Looked up to? Yes. Looked down on? Also yes.
Well, I'm sure your grandfather and all your lovely ancestors will look down on you proudly, whatever you may choose to do in life.
We will not speak of this again, Rtophen.
So that's his grandfather, but yeah, in here we find out that his father was part of the last true samurai generation, and he instilled that same mentality into Takeo, which not only explains why he's so warrior-minded, but also why he's so loyal to the Emperor of Japan, even though he himself wasn't a samurai. But through winning battles, he gained the Emperor's trust, which eventually led him being sent to the Group 935 base in Origins to spy on Rtophen and Maxis and take whatever of their work he could. And the final leaked character bio we got is for Dempsey, which says, in January 1917, Germany resumed unrestricted submarine warfare. The German foreign minister, in the Zimmermann telegram, told Revolution Torn Mexico that US entry was likely once unrestricted submarine warfare began, and invited Mexico to join the war as Germany's ally against the United States. In return, the Germans would send Mexico money and help it recover the territories of Texas, New Mexico and Arizona that Mexico lost during the Mexican-American War 70 years earlier. British intelligence intercepted the telegram and passed the information on to Washington. Wilson released the Zimmermann note to the public, and Americans saw it as a cause for war. As war waged in Europe, Tank Dempsey and his fellow US Marines were eager to join the fight, convinced of the threat Germany posed to the free world. When finally deployed in 1918, the Marines fought their famed battle at Belleau Wood, creating the Marines' reputation in modern history. While its previous expeditionary experiences had not earned it much acclaim in the Western world, the Marines' ferocity and toughness in France earned them the respect of the Germans, who rated them of stormtrooper quality. Though Marines and American media reported that Germany had nicknamed them Devil Dogs, there is no evidence of this in German records. Nevertheless, the name stuck. The Battle of Belleau Wood was the turning point in the war, bringing Germany's spring offensive to a grinding halt. Little did the Allies know that their victory would push the increasingly desperate German command into accelerating their more unconventional plans. Following the battle, Dempsey spent a few days recovering from minor injuries in a French field hospital. It was here that he met Kelly, a British spy who was posing as a nurse. As their relationship flourished, she, perhaps foolishly, shared what she knew about the Germans' new initiative with Dempsey. Once he informed his superiors that German plans hinged on securing a site of archaeological interest located somewhere in the south of Verdun, Dempsey was able to secure enough support for a reconnaissance mission to the area. Though under orders not to engage, Dempsey departed for Verdun, hungry for battle. So there's a lot of storyline information there regarding Dempsey, the most interesting thing to me being Kelly, a character of course we've never heard of, although in Alpha Omega we heard of a character called Phoebe.
That really you, McCain? I gotta know for sure. Tell me something only the two of us would know.
You sure you want me to do that, Tank? We go way back. I can embarrass the heck out of you if I wanted to.
Okay, let's keep it cryptic. Me and Phoebe. Sum it up in 3 words.
I forgive you.
Can't say I'm surprised. However mad you were at the time, I knew you'd come around. You've always been the forgiving type.
Man, discreet. See how I didn't embarrass you by telling everyone exactly who Phoebe is?
Now we can speculate on who Phoebe is. Was it Dempsey's wife? Was it one of his lovers? It sounded like from the conversation he had with Peter McCain, this is just what I got from it, that Phoebe was one of Peter McCain's lovers and then Dempsey got with her at the same... I don't want to say he's that type of guy, but yeah, from this we learned whilst he was in hospital in a French field, he met a British spy called Kelly. The two got into a bit of a relationship, and then she accidentally let it slip to Dempsey that she knew of the Germans' new initiative, in which Dempsey then took that information to his superiors, and which eventually gained enough support for a reconnaissance mission in the area. So yeah, storyline information about Primus, Rtophen, Taku, Nikolai and Dempsey that we never knew. Now, like I said, whether or not some, all or none of this is canon, we just don't know. I mean, some of it clearly lines up with the actual story. And stuff like Takeo's father, for example, Treyarch do touch on his family in-game being his grandfather, but we learn nothing. Whereas in here, we now know a little bit about his father. So there we go. New storyline information about our characters who this year in Black Ops 7 2025 look to be returning. So there we go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. If you have, drop a like rating. Make sure you're subscribed to stay up to date with the latest content on the channel. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, goodbye.